A deadline looming as talks are set to resume later this month. The U.S. and other world powers trying to reach a deal with Iran over its nuclear capabilities. Big questions, though, remain over whether the media have been downplaying the potential dangers of a nuclear agreement for Israel and the U.S. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu telling a joint meeting of Congress this week the results of a nuclear deal with Iran could be catastrophic and secure Iran's ability to obtain a nuclear weapon. Let's talk about the coverage with Judy Miller, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter and Fox News contributor, Lynn Sweet, his Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times. Judy, what did you think of the media coverage of Netanyahu's speech?
Well, apart from being wall-to-wall and extremely extensive, there were some things that were left out. The words that Israel has a nuclear bomb were almost never printed or heard on the air. The Iranian position, which is they have stated repeatedly that they don't want a nuclear bomb, was not mentioned in almost any of the coverage. And finally, the fact that Iran is a member covered by the NPT, the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and they have already agreed to an interim agreement that Bibi Netanyahu originally opposed and now says actually isn't so bad. I think if I fault the coverage, it's in the fact that what wasn't there rather than what was there. There was ample coverage, but was it sufficiently balanced? Not so much.
All right. Lynn, first of all, your overall take on the coverage.
Well, my overall take is that for an issue where a lot of people may not have been paying attention, John and Judy, and where there's a lot of complexity involved, at least the visit of the Prime Minister to the United States and his speech to Congress generated a lot of stories. Whether or not you're interested in technical matters of nuclear nonproliferation, such as the matter of centrifuges and the role they play in negotiations, or just some of the horse trading politics in getting around to the table, I think the media did a good job of generating, as Judy said, just a lot of coverage in the past days.
A lot of observers, Judy, has said that Iran doesn't need nuclear energy for a civilian program. It's got, some of the world's largest oil reserves. That there's got to be a nuclear weapon component to what they are building inside some of those hidden mountains.
Well, I think it's Iran's own behavior that's raised these questions. On one hand, it has accepted a great deal of inspection, especially under the interim agreement. But I think the bigger problem is its refusal to be honest about the work that it had done earlier towards miniaturizing warheads so that they could put nuclear material on a missile. Things like this they've refused to talk about, and that raises all kinds of questions. Never mind the fact that they were developing 2 facilities secretly before the world caught them at it. So Iran's own behavior raises many, many questions. But I still think the idea that this was a kind of debate between Israel and the United States over a deal that hasn't happened yet is kind of jumping ahead of the gun. Also, I have to say, this was so important to Bibi Netanyahu from a domestic standpoint. I mean, he's seeking a historic 4th term as prime minister. This speech was aimed more than anything else at an Israeli audience, and I don't think Americans really heard that enough.
One of the points, apparently, of the negotiations, Lynn, is that the United States wants to make sure that Iran is kept at least 1 year from a breakout period, the timeline that would allow them to amass enough enriched uranium to build a bomb. Based on what Judy said, are we to be trusting the Iranians? Should the media be raising that question?
Well, I think a lot of the stories I've read shows that there is massive distrust of the Iranians. What there is, though, is not a unified thought between the Obama administration and particularly members of Congress as to how you dealing with Iran when you don't trust them. And the timeline is very important, not only the 1-year breakout period, but the length of the agreement itself. 10 years might seem like a lot. If I'm waiting for something, or you are, or to a kid who's waiting to grow up. But when you're talking with a regime that looks at the mega picture, 10 years may not be enough for the life of this agreement. And again, those are some of the issues that are out there that I think a lot of the stories have been writing about in the past week. And as controversial as the Netanyahu visit was to Congress, and as important as it might have been to him for his domestic political reasons, it did force a spotlight to people who chose to read a lot of stories about what's happening in these negotiations.
Yeah, let us all hope we don't wake up one of these mornings and find that Iran has just tested a nuclear weapon. Judy Miller, Lynn Sweet, we have to say goodbye. Thank you both.
Thanks,
Hey,
Joe.
thank you.